The charitable priest clapped an inquisitive eye upon Justine, and made her answer, saying that the parish was heavily loaded, that it could not easily take new charges unto its bosom, but that if Justine wished to serve him, if she were prepared for hard toil, there would always be a crust of bread in his kitchen for her. And as he uttered those words, the god's interpreter chucked her under the chin. The kiss he gave her bespoke rather too much worldliness for a man of the church, and Justine, who had understood only too well, thrust him away. "Monsieur," said she, "I ask neither alms of you nor a position as your scullion. It was all too recently I took leave of an estate loftier than that which might make those two favors desirable. I am not yet reduced to imploring them. I am soliciting advice whereof my youth and my misfortunes put me in need, and you would have me purchase it at an excessively inflated price." Ashamed thus to have been unmasked, the pastor promptly drove the little creature away, and the unhappy Justine, twice rejected on the first day of her condemnation to isolation, now enters a house above whose door she spies a shingle. She rents a small chamber on the 4th floor, pays in advance for it, and, once established, gives herself over to lamentations all the more bitter because she is sensitive and because her little pride has just been compromised cruelly. We will allow ourselves to leave her in this state for a short while in order to return to Juliet and to relate how, from the very ordinary condition in which she sets forth, no better furnished with resources than her sister, she nevertheless attains, over a period of 15 years, the position of a titled woman, with an income of £30,000, very handsome jewels, 2 or 3 houses in the city, as many in the country and, at the present moment, the heart, the fortune and the confidence of Monsieur de Corville, councillor to the state, an important man much esteemed and about to have a minister's post. Her rise was not, there can be no question of it, unattended by difficulties. 'Tis by way of the most shameful, most onerous apprenticeship that these ladies attain their objectives, and 'tis in all likelihood a veteran of unnumbered campaigns one may find today abed with a prince. Perhaps she yet carries the humiliating marks of the brutality of the libertines into whose hands her youth and inexperience flung her long ago. Upon leaving the convent, Juliet went to find a woman whose name she had once heard mentioned by a youthful friend. Perverted was what she desired to be, and this woman was to pervert her. She arrived at her house with a small parcel under her arm, clad in a blue dressing gown nicely disarrayed, her hair straggling carelessly about, and showing the prettiest face in the world. If it is true that for certain eyes indecency may have its charms, she told her story to this woman and begged her to afford her the sanctuary she had provided her former friend. "How old are you?" Madame Duvergier demanded. "I will be 15 in a few days, madam," Juliet replied. "And never hath mortal?" the matron continued. "No, madam, I swear it," answered Juliet. "But, you know, in those convents," said the old dame, "sometimes a confessor, and nun, a companion. I must have conclusive evidence." "You have but to look for it," Juliet replied with a blush. And, having put on her 6 spectacles, and having scrupulously examined things here and there, the duenna declared to the girl, "Why, you've only to remain here, pay strict attention to what I say, give proof of unending complaisance and submissiveness to my practices, you need but be clean, economical, and frank with me, be prudent with your comrades and fraudulent when dealing with men, and before 10 years' time I shall have you fit to occupy the best second-story apartment. You'll have a commode, pier-glass mirrors before you and a maid behind, and the art you will have acquired from me will give you what you need to procure yourself the rest." These suggestions having left her lips, Duvergier lays hands on Juliet's little parcel. She asks her whether she does not have some money, and Juliet having too candidly admitted she had 100 crowns, the dear mother confiscates them, giving her new boarding guest the assurance her little fortune will be chanced at the lottery for her, but that a girl must not have money. "It is," says she, "a means to doing evil, and in a period as corrupt as ours, a wise and well-born girl should carefully avoid all which might lure her into any snares. It is for your own good I speak, my little one," adds the duenna, and you ought to be grateful for what I am doing." The sermon delivered, the newcomer is introduced to her colleagues, she is assigned a room in the house, and on the next day her maidenhead is put on sale. Within 4 months the merchandise is sold successively to about 100 buyers. Some are content with the rose, others more fastidious or more depraved, for the question has not yet been decided, wish to bring to full flower the bud that grows adjacently. After each bout, Duvergier makes a few tailor's readjustments, and for 4 months it is always the pristine fruits the rascal puts on the block. Finally, at the end of this harassing novitiate, Juliet obtains a lay sister's patents. From this moment onward, she is a recognized girl of the house, thereafter she is to share in its profits and losses. Another apprenticeship, if in the first school, aside from a few extravagances, Juliet served nature, she altogether ignores nature's laws in the second, where a complete shambles is made of what she once had of moral behavior. The triumph she obtains in vice totally degrades her soul. She feels that, having been born for crime, she must at least commit it grandly and give over languishing in a subaltern's role, which, although entailing the same misconduct, although abasing her equally, brings her a much slighter profit. She is found agreeable by an elderly gentleman, much debauched, who at first has her come merely to attend to the affairs of the moment. She has the skill to cause herself magnificently to be kept. It is not long before she is appearing at the theatre, at promenades, amongst the elite, the very cordon bleu of the Cytherean order. She is beheld, mentioned, desired, and the clever creature knows so well how to manage her affairs that in less than 4 years she ruined 6 men, the poorest of whom had an annuity of 100,000 crowns. Nothing more is needed to make her reputation. The blindness of fashionable people is such that the more one of these creatures has demonstrated her dishonesty, the more eager they are to get upon her list. It seems that the degree of her degradation and her corruption becomes the measure of the sentiments they dare display for her. Juliet had just attained her 20th year when a certain Comte de Lorsange, a gentleman out of Anjou, about 40 years of age, became so captivated by her he resolved to bestow his name upon her. He awarded her an income of £12,000 and assured her of the 7. rest of his fortune were he to be the first to die. He gave her, as well, a house, servants, lackeys, and the sort of mundane consideration which, in the space of 2 or 3 years, succeeded in causing her beginnings to be forgot. It was at this point the fell Juliet, oblivious of all the fine feelings that had been hers by birthright and good education, warped by bad counsel and dangerous books, spurred by the desire to enjoy herself, but alone, and to have a name but not a single chain, bent her attentions to the culpable idea of abridging her husband's days. The odious project once conceived, she consolidated her scheme during those dangerous moments when the physical aspect is fired by ethical error, instants when one refuses oneself much less, for then nothing is opposed to the irregularity of vows or to the impetuosity of desires, and the voluptuousness one experiences is sharp and lively only by reason of the number of the restraints whence one bursts free, or their sanctity. The dream dissipated, were one to recover one's common sense mood the thing would be of but mediocre import. 'Tis the story of mental wrongdoing, everyone knows very well it offends no one, but, alas! One sometimes carries the thing a little farther. What, one ventures to wonder, what would not be the idea's realization, if its mere abstract shape has just exalted, has just so profoundly moved one? The accursed reverie is vivified, and its existence is a crime. Fortunately for herself, Madame de Lorsange executed it in such secrecy that she was sheltered from all pursuit, and with her husband she buried all traces of the frightful deed which precipitated him into the tomb. Once again become free, and a countess, Madame de Lorsange returned to her former habits, but, believing herself to have some figure in the world, she put somewhat less of the indecent in her deportment. 'Twas no longer a kept girl, 'twas a rich widow who gave pretty suppers at which the court and the city were only too happy to be included. In a word, we have here a correct woman who, all the same, would to bed for 200 louis, and who gave herself for 500 a month.